Good evening, and welcome to Cross-Examine. In an era where public discourse seems more fractured than ever, we're turning our attention to a force that has reshaped our world: social media. The question we're debating tonight is both simple and deeply complex. Is social media a primary cause of the growing political polarization we see across the globe? To help us navigate this contentious issue, we have two distinguished guests. Ben Carter is a digital sociologist and the author of The Algorithmic Age. He argues that the very architecture of social media is designed in a way that pushes us to extremes. Thank you for being here, Ben.
It's a pleasure, Anya.
And offering a different perspective is Chloe Davis, a renowned political historian and analyst whose work often explores long-term societal trends. She contends that while social media plays a role, it primarily amplifies divisions that have been developing for decades. Welcome, Chloe.
Thank you for having me.
We'll begin with opening statements. Ben, you have the floor.
Thank you, Anya. Let me be direct. Social media isn't just a mirror reflecting our society. It's a carnival mirror that distorts our reflection for profit. The platforms we use every day, Facebook, X, TikTok, are not neutral conduits of information. They're powered by sophisticated algorithms whose primary objective is to maximize user engagement. And what have these platforms learned is the most effective way to keep our eyes glued to the screen? Outrage, fear, and tribalism. This business model has a devastating side effect. It systematically promotes polarizing content. The system discovers that a nuanced, moderate post gets a little bit of attention, but an extreme, emotionally charged post goes viral. Consequently, the algorithm pushes the more extreme content into more feeds. This creates what we call filter bubbles, or echo chambers. Users are increasingly exposed only to information that confirms their existing beliefs, while the other side is presented as a caricature, uninformed, immoral, or even dangerous. Before social media, our information diet, while not perfect, was more varied. We might read a newspaper with a range of articles, or watch a nightly news broadcast with a degree of editorial oversight. Today, our information diet is personalized by a machine that's programmed to feed us the equivalent of junk food because it's addictive. This isn't an accident. It's a feature of the system, a direct consequence of its commercial imperatives. The result is a population that's not only divided, but also increasingly unable to comprehend the perspective of the other side, living in separate realities. Therefore, to answer the core question, yes, social media is a primary and powerful driver of political polarization.
Thank you, Ben. Chloe, your response?
Thank you. Ben raises some important points about the mechanics of social media, and I don't entirely disagree with his analysis of how these platforms operate. However, I believe he misattributes the cause, focusing on the tool rather than the hand that wields it. Blaming social media for our political polarization is like blaming the thermometer for the fever. The fever of division was raging in our society long before the invention of the like button. If we look at historical data, we can see the trend of polarization beginning its steady climb in the 1970s and 80s. Factors such as rising economic inequality, the decline of local community structures, and the fragmentation of the media landscape with the rise of partisan cable news all contributed to this divide. People were already beginning to self-segregate into politically homogeneous communities and media bubbles, a phenomenon some scholars call the big sort. What social media has done is pour gasoline on an already burning fire. It's an accelerant, a powerful amplifier, but not the source. The algorithms Ben describes are indeed problematic, but they're exploiting pre-existing human tendencies towards tribalism and confirmation bias. These are not new phenomena. They're deeply ingrained in human psychology. We've always sought out information that validates our worldview. So while Ben sees the technology as the primary culprit, I see it as a symptom of deeper, unresolved societal issues. If we were to regulate these platforms tomorrow, the underlying distrust and division would still exist. We'd simply find other outlets for them, just as we did with talk radio and cable news in previous decades. Therefore, while social media is a significant factor in the asterisk expression as polarization, it's not the fundamental cause. We must look at the historical and economic roots of our divisions if we truly want to find a solution.
Thank you both. Let's dig deeper into this. Ben, Chloe argues that polarization was a pre-existing condition and social media is merely a symptom. How do you respond to the idea that the technology is not the root cause, but rather an amplifier of long-standing issues?
That's a fair challenge, but the distinction between an amplifier and a cause becomes blurry. When the amplifier is so powerful, it fundamentally changes the nature of the conversation. It's like saying a microphone isn't the cause of a sound, but without it, a singer couldn't fill a stadium. The performance itself becomes something entirely new. The scale and speed of social media are unprecedented. Before, a person's echo chamber was their local community or a specific newspaper subscription. Today, it's a global, algorithmically enforced reality tunnel that operates 24/7. Updating in real time with content from millions of sources. Furthermore, the profit motive is a crucial distinction. Partisan news has an ideological agenda, but social media platforms have a purely financial one. They don't care if the content is left or right, true or false, only that it's engaging. This inevitably leads to the promotion of the most extreme voices because extremity is reliably engaging. This is a structural cause of polarization, not just an amplification of it. The architecture itself manufactures division.
Chloe, let me turn that back to you. Ben insists that the unique, profit-driven nature of these algorithms makes them a causal force. Is it really fair to treat social media as just another communication tool, like the printing press or cable TV, given its specific design to manipulate user attention for commercial gain?
I agree that the business model is a critical and unique element. It certainly makes the problem worse and introduces a new, dangerous dynamic. However, we must be careful not to grant this technology too much power over us. It implies a level of helplessness that I don't think is accurate or productive. People aren't just passive consumers of content. They make choices. They choose who to follow, what to share, and how to engage. The reason polarizing content works is because it taps into real-world anxieties, economic insecurities, and a genuine sense of political grievance. The algorithm is a tool, and like any tool, its impact depends on the user and the context in which it's used. The algorithm didn't create the anger. It found a way to profit from it. The challenge, then, is not just to regulate the tool, but to address the reasons people are so drawn to divisive content in the first place. Improving digital literacy and critical thinking skills is just as important as demanding algorithmic transparency.
Ben, Chloe is emphasizing human agency and the demand side of the equation. Do you believe users are truly free to make choices in an environment so meticulously engineered to guide their behavior?
That's a vital question. Of course people have agency, but it's not absolute. We're all susceptible to sophisticated psychological manipulation. These platforms employ thousands of engineers and behavioral psychologists to design systems that are as addictive as possible. It's a completely asymmetrical battle. To say people make choices is like telling someone in a casino that they're free to walk away, while the entire environment is designed with lights, sounds, and rewards to keep them playing. Digital literacy is important, but it's like teaching a child to swim and then throwing them into a tsunami. The structural forces are simply too powerful for individual choice to be the sole remedy.
Chloe, what about the spread of misinformation? Historically, there were gatekeepers, editors, journalists, who, while imperfect, provided a baseline of factual accuracy. Social media seems to have dismantled those gatekeepers, allowing verifiably false information to spread like wildfire. Isn't that a new causal factor in polarization, as people are basing their views on entirely different sets of facts?
The erosion of gatekeepers is definitely one of the most significant impacts. But again, let's look at the history. Trust in those gatekeepers, particularly the mainstream media, had been declining for decades before Facebook became a household name. This is tied to political events and a growing public perception of media bias. Social media didn't create the distrust, it capitalized on it. It provided an alternative for people who already felt that the traditional sources weren't telling them the truth. The problem of misinformation is terrifying, but it thrives in an environment where institutional trust has already collapsed. Rebuilding that trust is the fundamental task, not just flagging fake posts.
I'd argue that the platforms actively accelerate that collapse of trust, Chloe. By algorithmically rewarding sensationalism and conspiracy theories because they generate high engagement, the platforms have a vested financial interest in eroding institutional trust. It's a feedback loop. The platform corrodes trust, and as trust declines, users become more reliant on the platform for information, which allows the platform to corrode trust further. It's a downward spiral, and the algorithm is the engine.
That feedback loop is real, Ben, I concede that. But my point is that the loop had to start somewhere. It latched onto a vulnerability that our society already possessed. If we were a healthier society with stronger civic bonds and greater economic security, the algorithms would find less fertile ground for division. The technology is an opportunistic infection, not the primary disease.
We're nearing the end of our time. I'd like to ask you both for a brief closing statement to summarize your position. Ben, you first.
To conclude, while our society has always had divisions, we cannot ignore that social media has fundamentally transformed the scale, speed, and nature of polarization. Its business model, which monetizes outrage and manufactures consent within digital tribes, is not a passive mirror, but an active participant in shaping our reality. It has created a system where moderation is punished and extremism is rewarded, simply because it's more profitable. Acknowledging this is not about absolving personal responsibility, but about recognizing that we're all participating in an environment designed to divide us. Therefore, addressing the very architecture of these platforms is not just a technical issue. It's one of the most urgent democratic and social challenges of our time.
Thank you, Ben. Chloe, your final thoughts?
My final point is one of caution against technological determinism. It's tempting to find a single technological scapegoat for our complex societal problems. But polarization is a multifaceted issue with deep roots in our history, economy, and psychology. Social media has undoubtedly made these divisions more visible and more volatile, acting as a powerful accelerant. However, if we focus all our energy on regulating the platforms, we risk ignoring the underlying diseases of inequality, political alienation, and declining trust in institutions that made us so vulnerable in the first place. We must walk and chew gum at the same time, promote digital literacy and responsible platform design, but never lose sight of the more profound, long-term work of healing our fractured societies from the bottom up.
Thank you, Ben Carter and Chloe Davis, for a truly illuminating discussion. You've left us with two compelling perspectives: social media as a core driver of division and as a powerful symptom of deeper issues. It's clear there are no easy answers, and the path forward requires addressing both the technology and ourselves. Thank you for joining us on Cross Examine.